Good morning and welcome to the FCA monthly safety advisory call. This month, we're going to be talking about mobile elevated work platforms. I'm your facilitator, Daniel Echeverria with AmeriSafe. Let's dive right in and get started. So, if you have any questions about anything from today's call, please contact the FCA safety line, or you can contact us directly at safety helpline at finishingcontractors.org, or you can call 844-414-SAFE. Your questions are private and they'll be answered by somebody on our staff. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. So we're going to be talking about mobile elevated work platforms, and with the new standard that changed, the acronym is MEWPs. So when you start hearing me meow like a cat, that's why. So we're going to talk about what rules that apply. All right. So OSHA's rules from the construction regulations 1926.453, right? And different ANSI standards apply as well. ANSI standard 92.2 for trailer mounted, ANSI standard 92.3 for the push around, ANSI standard 92.5 for boom lifts, ANSI standard 92.6 for scissor lifts. And there's a lot of changes that are coming about recently. So we're going to talk about what's changed regarding to the machine design, responsibilities, the training requirements of the employer, the new familiarization rules, and site risk assessments. So we have a lot to cover today. And here's just a few examples of what's changed. All right, when we're talking about machine design, there's been significant changes to the load sensing equipment. All right, before machines are required to actively monitor load to interrupt normal operations and sound an alarm, all right, if they're overloaded. So we want you to pay close attention to these alarms. You'll no longer be able to complete certain jobs if you're trying to move too much weight around. All right, another change coming was the wind force requirements. And they're going to be rated for outdoor use or indoor use only now on your lifts. So we're going to have to choose the right lifts according to the right job, and they should be clearly marked. Tires, most rough terrain equipment will only be available with solid or foam-filled base tires for stability testing guidelines. So the availability of air-filled tires will be limited now. Take this into account when planning for your job sites with soft ground, sand, and gravel areas. Your tilt sensing requirements, all right? Machines that could previously only operate on level surfaces now have the ability to have the tilt sense alarm and the cutout. So assess the terrain that you need to use your boom lift in. The entrance gates are changing. The flexible devices like chains are no longer going to be acceptable entrances, and tow boards must be fully around the platform. So the takeaway to this is operators will need to be aware that they will encounter half height, full height, or saloon style opening gates rather than chains on the new scissor lifts and boom lifts. Platform railings, another change here. The railing height requirement has been erased for small indoor scissor lifts, so to fit through the standard doorways. All right, so folding rails will be in place, so you're gonna have to know how to operate those folding rails if your lift has one of those. And there's changes to the machine manuals and markings. All right, the operator manuals must include a list of the mobile elevated work platform's functions, features, operating characteristics. All right. The old and new machines should have updated manuals of responsibilities on board, and the technicians must be trained on what the updated marking procedures are. The old machines do not need to be retrofitted, but the new ones coming out are going to have to meet these new standards. So responsibilities. Let's talk about some of the responsibilities an employer has. All employers are responsible for training and familiarizing, and have proof of training and proof of familiarization for all employees that are going to be operating the mobile elevated work platform. Training has to be delivered by a qualified person and then offered in the employee's original language that they can understand, and ensure the employee who directly supervises those operators goes through training as well. More responsibilities. The supervisor who directly supervises the operators must be trained in proper selection of mobile elevated work platform. Again, that's referring back to that indoor use, outdoor use, and which tires are needed for the area you're going to be working in. The supervisor also has to know the rules, regulations, and the standards that apply to mobile elevated work platform. including operation, safe use, and training. The supervisor are responsible for knowing the potential hazards associated with use of the mobile elevated work platform and how to protect against them. Where manufacturers' operator manuals should be stored and when they should be used and how. The supervisor is also responsible for people who work directly with those operators and must ensure those operators have been familiarized with that specific mobile elevated work platform's training. So when the rental agent just drops it off and leaves, and if you don't know how to work that make and model, ask them to teach you, how give you that familiarization class. The operator is responsible for documents in the platform must have the knowledge how to work safely in your lift. This includes how to use fall protection properly, how to inspect your fall protection, where your anchors are, how the work you're doing can affect the stability of that elevated lift, how to safely use that lift, and the accessories that are assigned to each one, how to adhere to the safety plan and avoid site-specific hazards, how to complete your emergency procedures in line with the manufacturer's warning and safety information, how to use that emergency descent to get down when needed. Operators must be familiarized with the equipment before use. And like we said earlier, that rental company must offer that training. When requested, the dealers are supposed to give you that familiarization course for the buying, leasing, or renting program. And this is a huge thing in the MSHA world, in the mining industry, and it's good to see that spilling over into the OSHA side as well. So making sure that everyone's familiar with how to operate different makes and models as they get delivered into the facility. Now we're going to cover various different training topics ranging from hazards, inspections, factors that affect your stability. All right, we're talking about the proper PPE, the equipment components, safe use of equipment, proper selection, purpose and use of the manuals, and how to complete a site risk assessment, which is going to be coming forward these days. So hazards. Let's start with the general training hazards. All right, there's electrical hazards. We all know about staying 10 feet away from those overhead power lines. We're going to look at crush hazards, tipping, ejection, being overloaded, trying to carry yourself, your partner, all your materials and tools up in the lift. We know the effects of wind, and we're going to talk about a rescue plan. So when we do our daily inspections, they are required. And this is to prevent injuries and ensure that your boom lift is working properly. To make sure these inspections are getting completed on a daily basis. Factors affecting the stability. All right. You've got soil that's wet and damp from rain. All right. Uneven surfaces, underinflated tires. Those will affect your stability. Unbalanced load, trying to bring everything at once in your basket. The wind blowing over 25 miles an hour will definitely affect your stability. The grade of the earth around you will affect your stability. And let's not also forget those landscaping factors. Or when you're working around a facility that has a lot of trees, bushes, and small hills running over the landscape. I've seen that affect stability as well. So when we're going to talk about our lanyard choice here, we want to talk about the difference between shock absorbing lanyards and self-retracting lifelines, because it's not one lanyard fits every situation. With your standard shock absorbing lanyard with a 6 foot tall employee, 6 foot tall employee, 6 foot long shock absorbing lanyard, you already need over 12 feet to fall. All right. So when we talk about deceleration, we add that the harness will shift improperly if it's worn improperly from the center of the back towards the shoulders. It's got another foot of stretch there. And you add a safety factor in just so we don't smack off the ground. Safety factor being around 3 feet. That needs us to be a minimum of 18 feet to fall. 18 and a half. If we call it about the half foot for fall arrest. All right. 18 and a half feet to fall is the minimum. You're planning out your work area. That's a long distance to go. All right, so when we talk about that, we're talking about using, you also consider using your self-retracting lanyards, the ones that lock up and cinch right away. they don't have as much of a fall going forward. We talk about falling. We also want to talk about having our rescue plan. It's imperative that we build this in to our pre-task, within on our site risk assessment. But when the harness is spread across the butt strap, all right, and all that weight is getting put on your femoral artery, as you can see in our diagram right here, we call the blood flow to the body from the legs to the body. It's one of the biggest veins and arteries in your body. And studies have shown that permanent damage to the lower extremities and death can occur if the employee is suspended in the harness for 15 minutes or more. So it's imperative that we talk about our rescue plan on site. What are you going to do? How are you going to get that employee down? It could just be as simple as throwing up that 20-foot extension ladder. That way that's right underneath him so he can grab onto that. We can take it over to the wall, and then he can climb his way down or back up wherever he needs so we can get him treated. All right. There are rescue poles out there. You can use a lift, a man basket on a forklift. Depending on your situation and your site, what are you going to do for the rescue? And then we have our mobile elevated work platform rescue plan up on the screen right now. And you can see the different types as it goes into different rescue scenarios and what steps we're going to take. And this is why we encourage a lot of employees to not work by themselves, because it's hard to rescue yourself after you've fallen. So let's talk about some safe use of the equipment. All right. We're supposed to barricade off the area surrounding our lifts. We'll implement the traffic control measure. And I've seen some companies that are trying to do this and they do a good job. And I've seen other job sites as we go up to do inspections for our clients where they didn't bring anything and they got to take the boom lift on an active roadway. All right. So make sure you bring all the right tools for the job. That's part of that planning phase. All right. And select the work locations with firm level surfaces when you can. So use scissor lifts outside only when weather conditions are good and they're favorable. And scissor lifts rated for outdoor use are limited to the wind speeds below 25 miles an hour. You cannot take those scissor lifts up on a nasty windy day. You're going to get thrown over. Only stand on the work platforms, never the rails or the ladders. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about as we're painting, we're spraying that upper deck and that ceiling level. We sometimes have in the past have climbed up on a mid rail, climbed up on a top rail. All right. So if we're using a scissor lift or boom lift, we're not supposed to be climbing up on those rails. So let's reposition so we can make our work within easy reach. Never tie off to anything outside of the basket unless you're fully transitioning with 100% tie off. Report any equipment defects or maintenance that's needed to the lift. If the lift is unsafe to use, don't use it. And boom lifts require ejection protection. That's required to wear that harness at all times. All right, so now we're talking about the proper selection. They're being classified as Group A, which is all mobile elevated work platforms, your scissor lifts that move vertically but stay within inside the tipping lines. All right, the basket moves up and down and it doesn't move from side to side. All right, Group B is all other types of lifts. And type 1 can be only driven from the stowed position. Type 2 can be elevated, but it's controlled from the chassis. All right. And type 3 can be driven elevated, but it's controlled from the work platform, like your normal boom lift. You can drive it, you can move it around, reposition it. So when we talk about using proper selection for the job, that's what we want. And the vast majority of these are going to be type 3 anyways. So make sure you know what you're getting when you're ordering it. Purpose and use of manuals. We want you to always read and familiarize yourself with that safety manual. It's supposed to be on your machine all the time, and it's proper inspection protocol to verify it's there, to verify the emergency action procedures, all right? How to lower those lifts safely if something were to die out while you were in the air. Employers are required to train, familiarize, have proof of training and familiarization for all employees that operate a mobile elevated work platform. The training has to be delivered by a qualified person, again, and offered in a language and format that the trainee can understand. So if they speak Spanish, it's supposed to be in Spanish if that's their primary language that they understand it. If they speak French, it's supposed to be in French. All right. Ensure people who directly supervise your operators are properly trained. So, lead man, foreman, supervisor, general contractor from that side, whoever's in charge of those operators that day, they have to be fully trained. And we have to have documentation that they're fully trained. All right, so you're going to have to take your operator's performance evaluation, show that you know how to operate that equipment. And like we said, they're moving along toward the signs of like how each model of a forklift is supposed to require a check ride. Each model of scissor lift and boom lift requires the operator to be familiar with it. And if they're not, the operator shall receive instruction on the following items: location of the weather restraint compartment for the weather resistant compartment for the manual, the purpose and function of all controls, the safety devices, and how they work properly, specific to that make and model that's delivered to your job site. And we're required now to document our mobile equipment inspections, our platforms. All right. So as we go through our visual checks. We're going to look for any leaks. We're going to check the tires to make sure they're in good condition. The entrance gates are fully attached. Well, we're going to look over the welds. If it's propane, we're going to take a look at the propane tank. If it's gas powered, make sure it's not leaking. All the safety warnings are working and they're attached. And we're not going to go through every single line on this checklist, but we're going to have to get familiar with these, and we're going to have to show proof that we're doing these on a daily basis. Now, according to the new standards, you're going to have to perform a site risk assessment, which we're already doing as we work our job sites daily to an extent. But the new standard is going to require that you develop a safe use program for your mobile elevated work platforms on the job site. And the safe use program starts with the site risk assessment every day, repeated on a daily basis. So when is this performed? Start of the shift, after it rains, whenever break happens. All right. Just trying to make sure that the ground in the work area is not changing. The work sites, the hazards are not changing. All right. So how do we perform a site risk assessment? It's fairly simple. Define the work that you're going to do. What specific tasks do you need to do to complete the job? That's all about location. Where will you be working? Will you need to transport the machines? When does the work need to be finished? Are there certain times of the day that you're not going to be able to work? Define that work area. Select the correct mobile elevated work platform for that task. Do you need a boom lift? Do you need a scissor lift? Do you need a vertical straight lift? And then evaluate the risk. Are we sending our employees to work on a facility where there's 1,000 trees planted? They can't actually get close to the building. So they're trying to operate in between and over the trees. All right. Are there any gas hazards on the ground that we're going to accidentally run into, or a telecom pole? Because communication cables are fairly expensive. Or is there any overhead power lines in the area? What's the traffic flow like? Do we need to set temporary traffic controls for the area we're working, just in case we have to take the lift on the street? All right, so evaluate these risks. And for every risk that you find, have a way to mitigate and control that risk. All right, using safe work procedures, proper PPE, your training, smarter scheduling, and develop that rescue plan for, heaven forbid, that operator falls out of that lift. How are we going to get to them? How are we going to get them down? And we need to communicate. So we've identified all these controls. Communicate these plans with those operators. All right. Make sure the occupant and the operator have the basic knowledge and the safety mechanisms of that lift to ensure they go home at the end of the day. The supervisor is supposed to monitor the use of that mobile work elevated platform to ensure the safety plan is followed. All right. So we know we went through a lot. We talked about what's changed about the machine design. We've talked about the different responsibilities from the employer, the vendor, all right, the operators, the occupants, all right, the new training requirements. We talked about getting familiar with each piece of equipment that gets delivered to our job site and how to perform a site risk assessment. If you have any questions, again, do not hesitate to reach out to the FCA safety line. You can contact us at safetyhelpline@finishingcontractors.org or give us a call, 844-414-SAFE. And again, your questions are private and they'll be answered by one of the safety professionals on our staff. Again, this was mobile elevated work platforms and the changes. This is your July monthly safety call. Stay safe out there. Have a great day.